Hello and welcome to This is Nigeria, Unlocking Her Potential. This is the program that showcases Nigeria's investment and development opportunities across the 36 states of Nigeria. However, the events of 2020 have turned the world upside down. First, it was the pandemic, and then we had this protest that swept across Nigeria and echoed around the world, the Endsars movement. Today we're looking at the aftermath of that protest because it dovetailed into a series of chain reaction. The hoodlums took over, there was a palliative frenzy, stray bullets here and there, people died. So we're looking at the consequences of that protest on today's program. My name is Mayowa, Oluwabiyi. Don't go away, stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Nigeria, and the conversation is still on the aftermath of the Endsars protests in Nigeria. With me in the studio is Niyi Akinsiju, an investment analyst and a public affairs analyst. You're welcome to the program.
Good to be with you. Thanks so much.
And seated next to him is Kargbo, a legal luminary and a public affairs commentator. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Niyi, the aftermath of the Endsars protest dovetailed into vandalism, palliative frenzy, and it brought a lot of things to the fore. The Kargbo palliatives have been installed in warehouses across the country, and the hoodlums took advantage and looted, and people joined, because I don't think it's just hoodlums alone. The population that we saw in Jos on rooftops, it's like the whole city converged at the warehouse. What's your take on this development?
For me, actually, I think it's a neighborhood thing, you know. Yes, because the protest itself ended up being hijacked by hoodlums or by characters that didn't share in the focus and the temperament of the peaceful protest. And we were recording that before the 11th day of violence. That violence actually peaked. One, we saw Relay police station went up in smoke and fire, you know, and of course we saw some people also attempting to break into Ikoyi prison, you know, Benin prison, Okobi prison, and all that.
Jailbreaks all over the place.
So, then of course, the first thing that would come to mind was why exactly was that where prisons targeted in the first instance. Then, of course, as we're trying to get to terms with those one, started hearing about warehouses being assaulted, being attacked, and all that. Well, to the ordinary interpretation to that would be that in the aftermath of managing the COVID-19 pandemic, the truth is that a lot of people actually became jobless. I think the last figure was 27% unemployed. I think 24 or 25% under unemployed. If you add that together, you'll be looking at 40% population of the population that were that would not describe as economic agents. And of course, when you say an individual is not an economic agent, would mean that he was living under the subsistence line. And well, if such person had news about food being accessed in a certain place, there is a temptation that you will see such person rush into that place. And I think in aggregate, that's what happened in those communities. People thought, well, this is an opportunity to assess these things. And of course, you also see some organization around it, because these were warehouses that were not just on the roads. They were in far-flung places.
Yeah.
So it will interpret to mean that some people were responsible for locating and identifying, and then of course mobilizing people to that point. In a state of riot, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible, even to the extent that while some people were carrying packs of Indomies, some people were busy pushing tractors
and motorcycles.
So it's mainly an opportunistic thing. Once you get somewhere and you see an opportunity, because again the security environment was laxed, the individual would believe that at that point in time he or she was in charge. So that's the spectacle we saw. Some people had said the warehousing of those items were inappropriate. I don't have an explanation for that because I was not part of managing it. But the news I had was that there were two tranches of palliative. You had the federal government as handled by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. You also had the Kargbo, the corporate, the companies, the private sector, also contributing money to put together these packages. And the packages were supposed to go directly to the state governments, not through the federal government. Okay. The federal government one was done between April and May. And they were actually sourced from reserve, reserve of grain reserve, and of course the stores of customs. The funding direct from the pocket of the federal government was minimal. Most of the items were sourced from the customs and the grain reserve. Now the Kargbo, that's by the private sector, was also by the explanation of the managers of the items that were distributed, was that they decided to source these materials direct from manufacturers, so that there will not be distortion by market pricing. So, and when this was made, they also made it clear to the government that the managers of the sourcing body would be responsible for how the regulations of how this will be distributed, so that it can get to the grassroots. Now, how it was managed, that it took, because to my mind, I believe that in truth, if the governors or the state governments were up and doing, and they had the opportunity of such items, I think it could have been done in 1 week, because it is a way of pacifying and of course cooling down tension.
Yes.
Especially given the fact that in each state there are percentages of people living under the poverty line, and such intervention in their lives, the earlier it gets to them, the better. I tend to to squirm when I heard that some states actually had stored those items for more than 3 weeks. I don't think it's appropriate. These are goodwill interventions, and they should have been distributed based on goodwill too, on a need to quickly touch base, with the people.
All right, let me put you on pause. All right, we'll go on a short break. This is Nigeria. We'll continue. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, the conversation is still on the aftermath of the Endsars protest in Nigeria. Sam Kargbo, you and I during the lockdown, we discussed the issue of palliative distribution, how it was meant to go round, especially in the heat of the lockdown. Now that we're partially unlocked and not fully locked down, why would government or whoever was in charge of palliative distribution, because some explanation that we heard from the governors was that they were keeping them for the second wave of the pandemic. Why would there be so much poverty in the midst of abundance? Because that's the story of Nigeria. We have huge resources and we still have poverty. We're still the poverty capital of the world. Now there are palliatives all over the place in warehouses, and the populace is hungry. What's your take on that?
I would want to start by agreeing with his own conclusion that even if those palliatives were not theirs, they were palliatives by the private sector as their own contribution to the COVID situation. If they were actually attentive and responsive to the needs of the people, they would have had an arrangement with them that would have accelerated the distribution of those palliatives. We are having all sorts of stories from both sides, both from the private sector. The first thing that I read from them was that they had not gotten all of the supplies from the manufacturers, and that they had put the process on hold, waiting for the full supply. We discussed that here. You don't have the data. You don't have the numbers of the people that you are targeting. We've discussed here on the difficulty of unraveling the riddle of the poorest of the poor that we are supposed to address with your intervention. How do we have that? Do you have the data that you are going to give to the governors to say we've identified these people from within your own community for them to be the recipient of this COVID? If you give it, like you've said here, to the governors, politics would intervene, because they would now want to cash on it and drive home their so-called statement, or what's their catchphrase? Dividends of democracy.
Yes.
Most of the time they would ride on it to say this is what they have done. Some of them may have even been, some of them could have been tempted to reback those things to give the impression that it's from them. But let's come back to what we are saying here. It's a hungry community.
Yeah.
No matter what you say, whoever you call them hoodlums, call them whatever. Those are Nigerians. They would never have been there if they are not hungry.
It's true.
I don't see any of us here that would, no matter what the sort of opportunity, you can't go there because what? You know where the next meal is coming from. But many of those people who risk that, you see some of them carrying goats on their head, carrying all of these things, to tell you that to them that's a bounty. But let them retool themselves and let them repackage the intervention, because the problem that this particular protest that degenerated to riots have caused, we may not see them now, but they're going to come at us. Take for example Lagos State. Lagos State is offhandedly, without even going to the details, they said they will need what? For infrastructure alone, they will need about $1 billion naira. A trillion naira for them to get back. This time around, it's not development, but what? To resuscitate the existing structure. That in itself, if it is not more than the budget, it's almost about the budget of the state for a year. The question now is, where are they going to get that money from? They are now going to what? Start tweaking, pushing one item from here to there in order to what? To accommodate, because they definitely are not going to leave this infrastructure unattended to. And what is it? They are going to spread wide and thin. So those problems are going to come, and for very many private individuals who have been affected by this particular riots, very many of them, it's not just the money that is affected. Their workers are going to be off job for a very long time.
And it was already bad.
It was already bad after COVID. The economy was just what? Picking up from COVID. For many of us, it was a miracle that we are having a positives, a B rating within this particular COVID time. The country was having what? A B rating, and for some of us, it was something for us to cheer the government back. And just about when we are saying what? Hooray, we have this. So we are going to go back to square one. So the problems are going to come. There is also going to be need for huge investment on security. Definitely.
Because the police stations
have been burnt down, and you also would have to deal with people who are now going to bear with the feeling that after all, the security agencies are not so strong as we think they are. Though, sorry, the one is not strong, as effective as we had thought they are. They could be tempted. So many of them would try their hands to crimes. And hey, the social and economic effect of that, like I said, is going to come at us very soon.
It's not looking good at all.
It's not looking good. And I would always say so, for every moment that I have the opportunity to see something, let the governors and all of them that in the public office, exercising public functions and feeding on public money, let them do their job. This time around, let them put the emergency mode and work 24/7. If not, we may have this thing coming at us again very soon.
Okay.
God forbid.
Niyi Akinsiju, this has dampened the investment climate because Lagos is the commercial hub of Nigeria, whether we like it or not. What is the implication for investment or investors in Nigeria?
Yeah, well, it depends on how we're looking at it and what dimension of the investment community we're talking about. As I noted, for the Lagos State government, in terms of its losses, the structures bonds, the High Court, the Lagos State High Court, Boshire, in fact, I think NPA, that's federal government, City Hall, the DNA lab, which is supposed to be the only DNA lab in the whole of Nigeria. You know, that's the Lagos State, and that's conservative estimate.
Yes,
1 trillion. It's not even taken into consideration some local governments that were also looted, local government headquarters that were also looted during that period. The police had come out to say they are looking at 1.5 trillion, you know, for the to also
put things back,
to put those to reconstruct, because most of the police stations attacked were actually burnt down, you know. So they're looking at about 1.5 trillion for that alone. The MPA, I think it's about 15-story building, was burnt down. You know. That's we can't start now. You need a quantity surveyor to do that. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce has also come out to say that for the private sector, the estimated loss of 700 billion in terms of structure demolished or destroyed. They are not looking at businesses, losses that would have come, that would have been generated because of businesses that were not, you know, consummated. So when you had that would be bigger, because transactions are measured in 60 minutes, you know. So if from the beginning of that demonstration, that has been calculated from the beginning of the demonstration, when flights to Abuja and Lagos, in fact, flights around the country were stopped, it had economic implication, yes. You know. Moving around, what do you call it, the articulated vehicles that loads fuel could not load for about 2 weeks, and that was why we experienced fuel shortage in Abuja for about 2-3 days. You know, that's also losses in terms of business not being, you know, consummated. The truth of the matter is, in terms of investment inflow, foreign direct investment, however you want to put it, either foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, you have challenges and limitations, because already foreign investors are taking a back seat away from Nigeria. Today it's near impossible to have foreign investors come into the country, you know, especially in the wake of the COVID-19, yes. You know, and yes, in the wake of the COVID-19 mainly, this has now exacerbated the whole thing, and of course you know that when foreign investment is not coming into your jurisdiction, it has its own impact too, especially where we depend on them for foreign currency inflow. You know. So, but what had also saved us is because we have a robust one way or the other, we have a robust internal capital market interaction and transactions.
Well, we've been talking aftermath of the Endsars protests in Nigeria, and I've been discussing with Niyi Akinsiju. Thank you for coming on to the program. And Sam Kargbo. Thank you for your analysis.
Once again, thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a wonderful time talking to my erudite speakers in the house, in the studio. We've been discussing the aftermath of the Endsars protests in Nigeria. Our heart goes out to all the families that lost a loved one. The security men who also lost their stations, lost their lives. We pray that this doesn't happen again in Nigeria. And protesters, wherever you are out there, organize yourself. You have your right to protest, but be responsible, be civic, and your voice will be heard. And also to the government, I said, please, the use of live ammunition should be stopped. We should not have stray bullets killing stray people when there is a protest. My name is Mayowa, Oluwabiyi. God bless Nigeria, and this too shall pass.